Hello, everyone. I'm glad we all found some time to get together for our Q&A with Chris Jenkins on Red Hat and security. Hope we all have some questions ready to fire, and yeah, let's get this started.
Hi, everybody. As Max said, my name is Chris Jenkins. I've been in Red Hat for 8 years now, and my current role, I am the EMEA Chief Technologist for Infrastructure and Platform Security. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. Hopefully you have some good questions lined up for me, and also hopefully I have some decent answers for you. Thanks again, and let's kick this off.
All right, so hi Chris, my question would be, how does Red Hat make open source projects secure and enterprise ready, and what is the process?
Cool, thanks Joanna, really good question, and I'm going to abstract that a little bit up at the moment, just for an open source 101, preaching to the choir, so to speak, just so we know the nomenclature as well. So when we talk about open source in this instance, we're talking about the upstream community. So Fedora, for example. So upstream in the community, we have projects. Downstream in the enterprise, we have products. So just the difference between the community versions and the enterprise versions. I mentioned Fedora. So Fedora is the upstream project. The downstream product is Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So your question about kind of taking the open source projects, turn them into enterprise products. So Fedora, I think there's about 2,000 contributors in Fedora at the moment. About 35% of them are actually Red Hat associates. So about 35% of the people currently contributing to upstream Fedora, they work for Red Hat. Really interesting concept. They get paid by Red Hat. They probably don't go to Red Hat office at all, but they contribute upstream to the Fedora project. So what we do, we start with the upstream project. So we'll start with Fedora, and then we bring that internally into Red Hat. And that's when we have our quality engineers internally that do security hardening. They do bug fixing. They do vulnerability patching, and they do a heck of a lot of testing. I did have a look before about doing an LDAP search in our Red Hat directory for associates with quality engineer in their title. And we've got about 1,200. So 1,200 people in Red Hat who are actually quality engineers. And they take the upstream code. They do all the things, like I said, about security hardening, bug fixes, and that kind of thing. And then using the upstream first, they put all of that back upstream and then pull it back down for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. One of the big difference, we don't take things from the project, make all of our cool hardenings and patching, and then put it into the enterprise version. We always do upstream first. So any changes that we make, we put them back upstream and then pour them down and run the additional tests that we need for Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Fedora itself, they do test, the Fedora organization, but we do additional tests, and we always try to make sure that the Red Hat products play nicely with each other as well. So I say we've got about 1,200 people in Red Hat that do this as their job. So hopefully a very kind of bland answer, but we take the upstream projects. We do a lot of quality engineering. We also do documentation. I'm not going to diss the upstream documenters, but there isn't that much documentation for upstream projects in one place. So from a Red Hat point of view, as well as security hardening, we will document all of the software that we create as well. So hopefully in a very high level answer, does that kind of answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Oh, excellent, good start.
I've got a question next, Chris. We've seen recently with, for example, the sudo vulnerability that was recently discovered, Red Hat were able to very quickly by the morning push out a patch to fix that vulnerability. So my question is, how does Red Hat react to vulnerabilities when detected or raised by a customer?
Very good question, and a very good example as well at the moment. So being an open source company, it sounds rather strange, but we actively encourage customers to find vulnerabilities for us. It's an open source organization. So from a customer's point of view, we have an open email address, which has gone from my head, SecAlert, SEC alert @redhat.com. So if you've got a vulnerability, people can email that. From a customer point of view, if you're a customer of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, talk to your account manager. Another wondrous thing about the open source way of working is there's so many different ways to do things. So you could also raise a Bugzilla, so bugzilla.redhat.com. So from an open source point of view as well, because it's used across all different verticals, all different areas, it could well be that some other customers have found this issue before, this vulnerability before. So that's good because we've got vision across all of our customers. So we can say, okay, this customer's found it, this customer's found it, we'll take it, we do a vulnerability assessment to work out a high kind of level, low, medium, important, critical assessment of the particular vulnerability, like, as you said, the pseudo vulnerability at the moment. And then we work with the customer, we work with the upstream community, we work with the Red Hat partners. So if it's a vulnerability to do with one of our, say, a hardware supplier that we work with, then we will work with them to actually come up with a fix for it as well. So we've got the pseudo one at the moment. There was Shell Shock. I don't know if you remember Shell Shock, Poodle, Heartbleed as well. Actually, the Heartbleed one was quite cool. The Heart wasn't cool. Exploit, cool. Oh, I do myself a bit of a job here. The Heartbleed, it was the SSL vulnerability that was discovered by the Google security team. They found this vulnerability in OpenSSL. And that was on the 1st of August. I would have to double check all these dates, about 2014. And they did say it was one of the worst vulnerability found for traffic going across the internet. So that's pretty damned important, a pretty hefty vulnerability. The Google team actually fixed it themselves in about 6 days. That fix then came out as a Red Hat errata on about the 8th of April. So from a Red Hat point of view, we worked with the team, we worked with the Google teams, we turned it around and we actually had the fix out in Red Hat Enterprise Linux and upstream in Fedora in about 4 to 6 days. But we do say to our customers, you know, if you find these issues, talk to us about it, because we can put these upstream and help out. It's kind of the holistic, altruistic kind of way of working to help other people as well. I'm conscious that some of the dates on that may not be correct, but it was about early April 2014 when it came to Heartbleed. But that's just one example of how Red Hat can help our customers kind of doing these kind of vulnerability work.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Cool.
I have a question. So how does a product patching cycle at Red Hat look like? Do you guys follow the Patch Tuesday approach or not?
Yeah, so I'm not going to diss any proprietary software companies, not on screen anyway. So as you said, with Microsoft and other organizations, they have the concept of kind of Patch Thursdays, which is a very kind of quaint idea. I think if you look for Patch Thursdays, you'll also find that the day after is called Exploit Wednesday. So you have kind of Patch Tuesday comes out, Exploit Wednesday comes out, when they get the 0-day or the pseudo 0-day exploits in there. So kind of for this reason, and kind of because we're using the upstream stuff, we don't have an official patching cycle. So the Red Hat point of view, we will patch it as soon as we can. So if it's something that's critical, something that's important from a security point of view, we will work on that fix and get it out as soon as possible. One of the big things from proprietary software organizations that shall remain nameless is this idea of having a Patch Tuesday once a month. It's good from a patching window point of view. If an exploit comes out on, as I call, kind of Exploit Wednesday, do people have to wait another 29, 30 days to be able to implement that patch? Even if the patch is out there, do they have to wait that long? Now, I think for some Microsoft non-server products, they do automated updates as they go through, so you get them a little bit quicker. But from a Red Hat point of view, we don't have the idea of Patch Tuesday. We have the idea of patch as soon as you damn well can, because it's going to be important, hopefully. And also as well, from just another quick one from a patching point of view, whenever we release an errata or a patch, it's up to customers to decide when to use that patch from a security patching point of view. So because the patch is available, we're not saying, okay, Mr. Customer, you've got 35,000 Red Hat Enterprise Linux servers, you have to patch them all in the next day. That's onto the customer then with their patching windows. So whether they do it on a 2 o'clock on a Sunday morning, or if they have more of a CI/CD infrastructure as code kind of way of working, where basically they can patch more regular. That's kind of up to the customers. Not saying we wash our hands of them, but to say the patch is out there, guys. So when you get round to it, please, please patch it. So I think that answered the question in a roundabout way. So basically, we haven't got one.
Makes sense.
Thank you for answering that question. I have one question. A lot of people seem to assume open source means less secure, but it seems to me like quite the opposite might be true, considering the sheer numbers of contributors. Would you consider open source project generally more or less secure than proprietary products?
So I'm an open source hippie, so I would say yes, it's more secure, but I'll have to justify that as well, I think. So from the open source kind of way of thinking, many years ago, makes me sound older than I am, people used to use open source operating systems or open source software because it was free. That was the #1 reason for using open source software. It was free. So, and they have 2 definitions of free. Free as in beer, you can Google that one. Free as in beer, as you don't pay for it, but also free as in speech, as you have the freedom to alter, modify, distribute. So open source, but the main reason was because it was free. Over the last 5 to 6 years, the #1 reason why people are using open source software now is because it's more secure, not because it's free. Paradigm change in the way organizations are using open source software. The journal, etc. He has a famous phrase, given enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. So that kind of idea that, right, if you've got enough people looking at this, then we can conquer anything. Very, very lovely idea. So because there are more people looking at the open source software, the actual code itself, then by definition, it'll become more secure. So in Red Hat Enterprise Linux and Fedora, I'm sure all of you as security people will be very, very good when it comes to SE Linux, Security Enhanced Linux. So this is the mandatory access control that sits on top of discretionary access control in the Linux kernel. And this was developed originally, I can't think of the dates, originally by the NSA. That kind of scares people. You've actually got software in Linux that's like been developed by the National Security Agency. Scares people. Completely the opposite's true. Because the code is open, it's even more secure. So although it came from the NSA, some conspiracists may say there are backdoors in place and that kind of thing, whereas the code is open, so you can see, so it's even more secure. So that's my personal thinking about it. But yes, because there are more eyes on the actual code, it does become, by definition, more secure. I should get off my open source tea chest for a moment.
I had a question that came just to mind with StackRox. We acquired StackRox, and I was wondering to what extent it expands its security, our security capabilities.
Yeah, so StackRox is really, really cool. A really, really good acquisition. So from a Red Hat point of view, I think it's our first acquisition since we were acquired. Big fish eating smaller fish kind of analogy there. Very, very cool. So StackRox have been a partner of Red Hat for a while as well. They concentrate mainly on security compliance regarding Kubernetes, so regarding our OpenShift platform. And their tool is really, really cool. There's who's the CTO and co-founder of StackRox. Really interesting YouTube video, but it goes into the high-level things within StackRox. So having the visibility of your cluster deployments, image scanning, analyzing role-based access control permissions, for example. And it sits on top of Kubernetes and integrates very, very nicely with Kubernetes. So you can do risk profiling, or kind of really, really clever things like that. Also, from an open source point of view, StackRox have open sourced their kubelinter. You go to kubelinter.io. It takes the YAML files that you use to create an OpenShift cluster, a Kubernetes cluster, and then gives you kind of top tips of ways to make it more secure. So I think this is going to be a really, really interesting addition to the Red Hat portfolio, having StackRox sitting around our kind of OpenShift deployments. I said I would recommend the YouTube video by Ali Goshen, as I said. It's about an hour, so grab yourself a cup of coffee, but it's well worth a watch, worth a listen. This is something that we're going to start to use within Red Hat a lot. And also, I shall get back on my open source teacher chest. When Red Hat acquire software organizations like this, we will open source the software as well. So we did the same thing with Ansible, with all of the acquisitions from Red Hat. So at some point, there will be an upstream project for the StackRox product as well. Hopefully, I'm not saying out of place, but that's how Red Hat rock. We are passionate about open source. So any acquisitions like the StackRox acquisition, we will open source the software as well. Off T-chest now.
I have a
so
question.
You're all completely asleep.
So I was wondering if, do we have any teams that perform offensive security and like doing penetration testing, or is it part of the QA engineering that you mentioned when a project goes from upstream to enterprise level?
So we have the QA teams do a lot of this kind of now. The problem in a way when it comes to pen testing, it depends on the environment you're testing. So if we said, okay, here's a typical a 3-tier architecture, we can do pen testing from there. Can you get from external client through DMZ, through database, etc., and then you could have some kind of like specified pen testing routines to actually work that out. Now, because the great thing, all of our customers are different. The problem is all of our customers are different. So the downside of that is we can't say we've pen tested it down to this nth degree, because as you say, there's examples of kind of cloud burst, and then you've got on-prem, you've got virtual, you've got different architectural environments as well. So if it's running on Z series S390, if it's running on x86, there'll be different kind of pen tests you will need in there as well. So I don't believe we have any dedicated pen testers in Red Hat, but we also have a lot of partners. So we have a lot of partners that we can call upon and say, right, we need some kind of some pen testing, please. Come and help us. So once again, a bit of a politician's answer there, isn't it? But it kind of hopefully answered the question.
So I got one more question from myself, which was, what are the differences between CoreOS and RHEL from a security perspective?
Ooh, interesting one. So CoreOS, great product. RHEL, great product. I shan't leave it there, honestly. I shall go into a little bit more detail. So RHEL CoreOS is based on various components of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So it's bits taken from Red Hat Enterprise Linux and built into Red Hat CoreOS. At the moment, it can only be used in an OpenShift 4 environment. So you don't get a CoreOS ISO, build it and run it. The reason from a security point of view is I may get shot down by CoreOS people that say it's immutable. I would say it's damn near immutable. So it's immutable to a point, which means from a security point of view, you can't really go in and change with the bits and bytes as much. Obviously, you can get in. From a Red Hat point of view, we kind of dissuade people SSHing into a CoreOS system because it's meant as part of an ecosystem, as an environment. So from that point of view, it makes it more secure. There's less stuff you can twiddle with on there. And then from a security point of view, because it's part of the OpenShift ecosystem, it's managed by the OpenShift masters. So it's kind of the over-the-air updates. You don't have to worry about doing yum update, for example, on there, or having lots and lots of repositories floating around. It's all managed by the OpenShift MCOs as well, config operators. I say we actively tell people, please don't log into your CoreOS boxes because it's almost immutable. that there are times when you need to. So for example, for debugging, if you have an issue with one of your CoreOS systems, you may want to SSH into it, have a look around, check some logs, see what's going on, but that's about it. So from an immutability, I'm just making up words now, from an immutableness point of view, that's what makes it more secure. It's kind of completely ring fenced and only updated by the machine config operators in OpenShift. And it's very, very cool as well. It uses Ignition to build the CoreOS system, so it's not good old-fashioned Kickstart and Anaconda and those kind of things. So it does use some really kind of cool things under the hood to actually create the OS itself. I'm a big fan of CoreOS.
No, that's a good explanation. Thank you.
Oh.
Do we provide any other security-related products? I was thinking, because when microservices communicate with each other, I suppose there are services required for authenticating and authorizing communication. Do we have anything around that?
Yes. Did I answer your question? No, I'm joking. No, so now from my point of view, I'm an infrastructure person. So I'm old, proper servers and that kind of thing. This middleware side of things is slightly dark art to me. But we do have products in our portfolio. So we have 3Scale for API management, for example, used by lots and lots of our companies as well. We have single sign-on, so Red Hat SSO based on Keycloak. So we have these technologies that you can use to enhance the security within our portfolio. I say I'm not a middleware expert, and if I say something, I'm sure I'll get a phone call from one of our middleware architects throwing a virtual chair at me. But we do, and things like Fuse as well from an integration point of view. So we do have packages within the Red Hat portfolio that can help with, because we're going cloud native, going more and more cloud native. We need to rely on authentication and authorization of the APIs and of the microservices that we're creating. But I'm not a middleware person, so on that note, I shall stop talking about middleware.
All right. Okay, are there any other questions? Okay. Well, Chris, thank you very much for coming here today virtually and answering our questions. Yeah. And hopefully we can speak at some point again if we're a bit further on our journey.
Definitely, more than happy. Thank you for inviting me as well. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.